That's what I see from Gen Z and younger is like, it's like, why be a part of this whole system because the benefits don't seem that great.
I've heard like young kids say stuff like that, but I have a hard time believing that they actually know because I think they're not smart enough to think that deeply. So what I think is...
Hey, welcome back everybody to another amazing episode of The Careful Boys. And the boys are back in town. Joe, take it away.
All right, so I saw this video and I probably could play it, but we're not gonna get caught by the algorithm, so I'm gonna try to briefly
no cursing.
Recall what it is. But the whole point is, right, so I've been noticing this thing, like when I opened up Joombi, I was going through this hiring phase, right? And I thought it was just the Hawaii thing where like I had about 50 people apply and I said, come on down to the interview, and about half didn't show up. So they applied for the job, they wanted the job, and half of them didn't even show up to the interview. And I was like, this is fucking weird.
So you thought it was the spirit of aloha?
I thought it was. I thought it was island time.
It is notorious.
Yeah. Surfer dudes, like, yo, man, when the waves are good, the waves are good. I'm not coming to work, you know? And then I was asking my friends in LA and everywhere else, and they're like, no, this is a thing. Like, this is a whole thing. Like, there's a lot of Gen Z and younger that's just like, you know, I'm just gonna work, like, just enough, or maybe I don't even really want this job that bad, right? And then I just watched this video. Theo Vaughn posted it. He had this dude saying that there's like 4 million like eligible working age males from like 20 to 45 that are just choosing to be unemployed. They're not collecting unemployment. They're just choosing not to work. And so I was like, I guess this is happening all over the place, because I also watched another video about this is happening in China too. And it's called the Let It Rot movement, where a lot of the youth there are just like, fuck it, we're not gonna work because we see what happened to our parents, and it's like, what's the point? After you work, you just like get forced to retire, and then you get used by the state, and then you die. So there's this sentiment just seems to be like common amongst Gen Z. And I've seen this within family members, within people that I know, their family, like there's just guys that just chill and they just choose not to do anything.
So they live with their folks, or what are they?
Yeah, until they're like mid to late 20s, and maybe they might help contribute, like find online jobs, and then they'll pitch into the house. So they're not like completely just sitting home doing nothing, but they're just not, they don't have a career.
They're not joining the rat race.
They're not joining the rat race. They're not doing things like that. And so that got me to think about like why, and maybe, I don't know, we have a huge male audience too, and I'm like, is everyone working?
How do they survive though? Like, what about food, or like they just don't buy things and they just stay at home so they don't have to pay for rent?
Mom and dad's fridge is always full.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, the people that I know, they're living at home, mid to late 20s, and they might help out their parents. They have a home-based business, so they're helping out their parents, or like, let's say they're contributing, like, or like they might be doing something online, like selling things, and then they'll like help pay the rent that way. So like they're doing stuff, you know what I mean? Like, but
I feel like I can almost relate. Like if I had parents that you know what I mean, that maybe they did really, really well for themselves, and I was just always provided for. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that could make sense. My parents were always just broke as fuck, so that's why I always ended up having to work hard. But I could also imagine if my parents weren't broke.
But how many parents did really well for themselves to have 4 million or whatever, you know? For 4 million people to sit.
Yeah, I don't think it's all wealthy. I think it's like people that live minimal. So like the people that I know, they're not wealthy. They're just like, you know, you're just, it seems like they, you know, when you're in high school, you live at home, right? You just stay that lifestyle. But then now you're like mid-20s and you're contributing to the family in some form. You might be paying partial rent, you might be kicking up money, you might be contributing to the groceries, but you're not making thousands a month.
Yeah.
You're just still living like a high school student.
I mean, if you can survive.
Right? But then this is happening. Well, I didn't know that it was happening to guys all the way up until 45 years old. I didn't know that.
What do they occupy their time with then?
That's a good question.
I think that's what everyone's wondering, because it's like everywhere. I don't know if maybe it's just completely anecdotal, but whenever I go to any store, any restaurant, or like a place that's like not desirable to be worked at, like say like a Jamba Juice or something, there's always like always understaffed. They're always like everything's like
I
a
see
mess.
posts everywhere now.
Yeah.
Yeah, everywhere.
All positions,
Dude,
Yeah.
and they're just like walk in job interviews whenever you want, like on the sign. So it's like I feel like everywhere they're just struggling to get people that maybe they just don't want to work these jobs. Maybe they think it's like beneath them or something.
Dude, during COVID, they were giving like $200-$300 bonuses for people to join like Taco Bell.
Yeah.
And like there were sign-in bonuses, whatever. At least I can only speak for the people that maybe are working that I've had conversations with. They're like students, or they're like people that just like the balance. Because when I started working, you know, I just needed money because I was alone at like no parents at like 20 something. And at that age, I was like, I need to pay rent. I got to do this. I need enough money. I'm going to work 2 jobs, whatever. But if you don't have to do that, then their mentality is more like, oh, I'll just make a couple hundred so I can go out. And that's it.
Do you think it's just a comfort thing for a lot of people? They're comfortable in what they do, their routine. They go to work for like a couple hours, they come back, and they just chill at the house.
Or do you think it's like a mix of extremism, like a stick it to the man because they're also like jaded by the system and truly like...
I think that's like an excuse people use.
I don't think that's real.
Because I actually think it could be mass depression.
Yeah.
That 4 million number is probably that, but then the people that believe more in a work-life balance stuff, I think they don't need it. So think
They
about
like
it,
choose it, but they're also like capable or have a career before, and just shows like...
Yeah, like imagine you're a college student. Imagine you're an unemployed college degree person, right? Like you want a job that's like respectable, corporate, whatever. You're not gonna go for a blue collar job. You're like, I had to do that because when I graduated, it was during the recession. So then I had a degree, but I went straight into shipping because I couldn't find a job. Like you can't fucking have a humanities degree and then work. There's not much jobs for that, or like a sociology degree or whatever. I had a psychology degree. There's not many jobs with a bachelor's you can get with a psychology degree. And then so all these people who believe that maybe they should have a higher pay because of what they had, they don't want these jobs that are available. So now we have a lot of jobs that are like, hey, Starbucks is open, whatever's open, right? But now you have all these people that feel overqualified, that's never worked a day in their life, that think that they should go work for Google or whatever.
Well, they also, plus a lot of those tech jobs are a fucking joke. I mean, did we not just see that with Twitter? Elon fired half of them, and Twitter's working totally fine. Everyone's like, Twitter's dead. Like, next Monday, Twitter is completely dead. You'll see. And then, like, Twitter...
Cut a lot of fat out of that company for sure. Yeah.
And then you guys saw that TikTok, I'm sure, of, like, that chick who worked at Twitter. And she's like, getting my wine from, like, you know, I'm having a wine party up here. And she's like, okay, I have meetings in the afternoon. And it's like, it's like the biggest eye roll ever of, like, a Silicon Valley job, quote unquote. But then, yeah, like Joe's talking about, I think social media has helped to make a lot of these jobs look even more undesirable. Like, there's this, like, beneath me quality to a lot of that shit. Like you were talking about, Nick, like, Jamba Juice, not desirable, right? But why? You're working. That's respectable.
Yeah.
But those things have been separated from each other. It's like the fact that you're working and the fact that that's honorable has been separated from each other. Because it's like, oh, no, that's a dumpster job. That's a shitty job.
I don't want a basic job.
Exactly. And then couple that with like social media, like remember that guy who was on the Cosby Show and they caught him bagging groceries at Trader Joe's.
Yeah, that was really messed up.
Making fun of him and shit, and so he had to quit. And it's like, dude, that like he's working for his family. That's fucked up now. Like that's beneath you now. Like, is that really what's going on?
I think that's the biggest issue is that there's like normal jobs, like working class jobs that no one wants because they feel like it's socially wrong and you're like a loser.
You're a loser.
But then I'm like, we need people to do all these jobs because they're like the normal jobs that people need to work in order for the society to function. We need guys to fucking rig the lines. We need guys to work the stewards. We need guys to we need all that shit. Like,
what started that though? Like, what started everybody calling
snobbery and classes?
Social media, dude. There's a huge amount of classes.
Asian parents.
And I think COVID too. I think it's like a big whirlwind of like no one's working, and then they're like, okay, I can get used to this, and then everyone's on their phone on social media, and so now that messaging is spread faster than ever.
Because I wonder if kids today, or at least younger people, still see that, like, because when I was like 18, 19, I worked at the mall. Everybody was really cool, and there was no feeling of like we're losers. And people that were at the mall that were just customers never looked at anybody like, oh, you work at Finish Line? What a loser! Like it was cool.
Like it was different. If you're 18 or 19 and you're working, it's like, oh, you're a go-getter, like regardless of your job. If you're like 35 or 40 and you're like, you know, bagging groceries, you know, I can understand that the world we live in will look at that and be like, hey, you're kind of a loser. You didn't do shit for the last like 4 years of your life.
we had coworkers that were that old, and we had people at Starbucks that were in their 30s, and the cool thing about them was, wow, they must be getting tons of benefits by now.
Yeah.
Hey, he bought an S2000 with saving up. Like there was. I don't know if kids today still think like that. I have no idea, but we all thought.
Yeah, I think John Butchers is just looking for 18 or 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
But they're just nowhere to be found.
But I even think like a lot of the 18, 19-year-olds nowadays, like they don't work. Like a lot of the students that come in our.
I get surprised when I see that.
Some people don't even want to drive.
Oh, bro, that's a whole conversation.
You know, that's crazy. They're like, why get a license? People driving around. Like, what
We
the
have
fuck?
this 16-year-old at the gym, and he goes telling me, I got my license. I'm one of the only kids in my school that have a license that are my age. Like, no.
But I kind of get it because they could Uber, right? But then also,
That shit costs money.
if you can think, like, it's like, why would I want to add $500 a month? Like, I think people are questioning consumerism, and I think when you question because younger kids now, they see like the dark side of materialism, consumerism, and capitalism, right? It's like you work, and you buy all this shit for what? Because they probably saw their parents go into debt, spiraling, just buying all this shit. So they see that, and they're probably like, well, I don't want to fucking do that. Why would I want to do that? And now there's this whole movement on minimalism and all these other things and living below your
Tiny houses.
whatever, right? So it might be just all these different things, just questioning like the normal middle class, keeping up with the Joneses lifestyle, working for a corporation, doing the 9 to 5. And also there's this whole movement of like, oh, pursue your dreams, your work should be your place of happiness and motivation and all that. And it's like, what about just normal jobs of like working class men or whatever? And I feel like those jobs disappeared because also a lot of people don't want them, or they can't, or they want to move away. Like whenever a society gets rich, they go, what do? Like they want to send their kids off to college, right? Even working class people want to send their kids off to college, and then they want them to become white collar. They don't want them working in like construction and stuff just like them. So I think as this moves forward, then it's like, who's gonna do those jobs?
Do you think this is just like a situation of like back in my day? Because like
That's what I feel like. It's a little bit of that too.
Because I think generationally, right? Like you look at how our parents grew up, or what their story was to come to this country, or what the jobs that they used to do versus like what we do now. Our generation, you have kids. I think everyone's just getting a little softer, and there's just less things to worry about, maybe.
Well, I think one is the survival aspect, right? Like most of the immigrant mentality is, I just need to fucking eat because I couldn't eat at home or whatever, right? So then now you have abundance. That's the second stage. Now you need meaning and purpose and work.
So that's our generation.
That's our generation, because we were just talking about, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to do something that I like, an art or whatever that I care about, not because I'm forced to be a doctor to pay for my bills or whatever it is, right?
That's the millennial version, right?
It is the millennial. And then maybe the next stage is, what's the point of it all anyway? What's the point of doing all this shit, buying all this shit? Why? Like, why even start a family? Like, I'm going to set my kids up to be in the system where they're gonna be economic slaves. Like, what's the point? And I think that's what I see from Gen Z and younger is like, it's like, why be a part of this whole system because the benefits don't seem that great?
I've heard like young kids say stuff like that, but I have a hard time believing that they actually know, because I think they're not smart enough to think that deeply. So what I think is, what I think,
you kind of have to be there.
yeah, because you have to
right?
you have to have been through some shit to really know what everything
be
you just said, what that
jaded.
means.
Yeah.
If you
You gotta go
haven't
through
been through some shit, it's just big vocabulary words, right? So I'm like, I hear like some young kids say stuff like that, but what it feels like to me, and I could be completely wrong, it feels like they're really just depressed, and this is the messaging that fits how they feel. Because in all of biology, organisms thrive when there's growth in their life and stability. So regardless if you're a postman that makes your rounds or if you're a billionaire, but if each day you can see yourself stacking chips, that's when the organism is the most thriving. So for a fact that people that are like, I'm just not gonna do anything, that to me is like, oh, this organism is not good. It's
going
not,
against your human nature.
Yeah, you're going against your DNA. So you're just now regurgitating words to explain your behavior, but I actually think you're not really about this.
Yeah.
Because you'll find growth somewhere else.
I think that's
why I see that as an excuse too. I'm like, you're just trying to find the narrative that justifies how lazy you are or some shit.
And also,
I was in a Lyft last night, not Uber, and this chick was driving, and she was telling me about how she just feels like she can't keep up because she's paying $3,000 a month for like 1,400 square feet, you know, in like California, and the gas just constantly goes up, and you know even the amount that she gets for ride sharing is going down. And there's days where she doesn't make any fucking money, and then there's maybe one random day where she makes like a decent amount of money that catches her up, but she always feels like she's on that thin line. And that's, I think, what's going on with a lot of people too. It's like so she's working, there's somebody sitting at home not working, and they're both basically seeing the same thing, which is at the end of the day, where is my progress? Like where really is it? I'm like, I lose all my money every month anyway because cost of living is so fucking high. And look at, you know, the rate of inflation with the rate of wages in America is a fucking joke, right? Like we can't even catch up. It used to be, you know, you could have a family, so like, you know, Bart and Geo, Bart could just support the family like with his job, but now it's got to be both people working for something at the same time because, you know, we're not represented, right? Like the system's not for us. It's for the top.
And that's why I emphasize working class families, because back in the day, working class families, you could have a single earner, like the father who worked at the factory, and they were able to carve out a little decent living
and could buy a house.
Exactly. And now like a working class family might have to become roommates with another working class family and jam pack that house.
Exactly.
So they can pay the rent in LA, which is now the average house is going to cost $800,000
at 5%.
Dude, give
me a break. They're pricing everybody out.
Yeah, so, and let's say you're a working class family and you're making $30,000 to $50,000 a year. How the fuck are you gonna afford a house payment, let alone a car payment? And then like, it just doesn't make, the math doesn't make any sense.
You're a rent slave, you're a wage slave.
Exactly. So I can totally see why the youth seeing that and going,
what's the point?
What's the fucking point? And then so maybe I'll just rent a room and because that's affordable. Maybe I can make $1,000 a month because that's affordable, and then I can just ride a bike everywhere, and then I won't get a girlfriend and a family because that's expensive. And then now everything is like, because it's not just happening in the States. This is happening everywhere in first world countries. Because even in Japan, like the birth rate is low, the marriage rate, all that stuff is low because everyone has the same mentality of like, I'm just gonna work till I die. What's the point?
Dude, I was listening to Jeff Bezos recently, and he was saying, he's like, yeah, you know, I think the economy's about to get pretty bad, so like families out there, you should probably start saving up. All right, see ya. Like, as if, you know, so tell that to the chick in the lift yesterday. You know, like, hey, these people can't relate at all. They have no fucking idea.
But that chick's still industrious, though. She's out driving and having a job. She's different than the person that's staying at home.
Well, you know why she's doing it? She's doing it for her family. That's it. She's doing it for the most primal reason that everyone out there, I think, is doing it.
And
family preservation.
That's why I believe that survival gets people to go, oh, I need to work, right? But then, the people that don't, they don't need to, is what I'm saying.
So that means it's got to get worse before you can get better.
I think so.
I mean, that's historically what they say, is that's when the, you know, the best civilizations are born. But I still think like that's why I give it up to the previous generation for the fact that like there was no social media, so nobody was there to hear your grievances. All you could do is this, and that's it.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a fuck how you feel. It was.
But also, when you worked and you saved your money, you saw more of it at the end of the day.
That's true. Yeah.
They weren't printing your money out of existence. Yes, they were moving off of the gold standard, slowly turning up the heat on the frog, right? But it was at least you could make a living for yourself, carve out a living for yourself.
But I would argue that was golden age America after World War II. I would say previous to that, Great Depression, like eras of just indentured servitude and just people coming in and working and they don't have anything. That's been a pretty big part of the history here, and I think we're going back to that, where people are just working and they're just debt slaves. So like, I can see why it's at this point where, hey, if I can eat food and sleep in a comfortable bed, I'm just gonna be on my phone all day.
100%.
Yeah. And I get that. I really get that mentality because
Dopamine.
I have a lot of fun in my work, but not everyone can have the same like work. Like, I don't know if I can have that same fun doing the normal labor jobs that you can't romanticize. Yeah. You can't romanticize that shit. It's just normal, honest work. That's all it is. So it's like,
but at least when you're doing the normal honest work before, right? You're saving up enough to afford a home, but now they're pricing you out of the market so bad you have to compete with other countries even to get a house now. You can't even just they fucked up our system so much that you can't have faith in it at all. So you're not. What are you working towards? It's like every step you take forwards, you're on an escalator moving backwards, and it's showing up now in the real world.
And I think the one thing that we didn't talk about that's like affecting men specifically is OnlyFans. Like that shit, I think ruins a lot. And pornography.
Yeah?
Like for real.
I agree.
100%. I thought you were about to say punchline.
No,
but that's on your
seriously.
face, all those shit.
No, that shit is. I think that's for real because, like, especially with men, like, there's all these studies coming out about how like, whenever you jerk off, like sexual dopamine release is like way stronger than anything else. Like any other dopamine release you get. So like these guys could just watch porn, beat off, get their hit, and be like, oh, I'm good for another like 15, 20 minutes, and then they're back on it again. Start beating their dicks, and they just.
That was me in college. I couldn't get any homework done because I kept jacking off and going to sleep.
And that fucks with your reward system, how you
I
do
do
things.
think we have a lot of misplaced dopamine these days because in like the
TikTok,
like the hard honest
so
work,
good.
You're supposed to get the dopamine from the actual work.
Doing
Good day's work.
Like actual like going, oh shit, I was very productive that day. Regardless of what the subject matter is, I did this much, I get a dopamine hit. But I think now it's like everything has to be so concentrated and it has to be like, bam, Alex Hormozy dropped some fucking bars on me, and I'm like, whoa, that was fucking crazy. I need to get more of that. I need to get more of that. Versus back then, that amount of dopamine was just like 8 hours of hard, whether it's cutting a tree or some shit like that. Yeah. But all of our dopamine is misplaced everywhere.
I think so.
And it's so hard to come back from that.
Dude, especially with social media, dude. Like with the TikTok algorithm is so good. I totally understand why people are just like constant. Because you're just watching everything. You see all this new funny stuff on TikTok constantly, and it never stops. Like my wife.
Sometimes I'm like
so
before bed, I'm like just 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
And then I go, oh fuck, it's an hour. Oh shit, but it goes.
I do understand what you're saying though. We are seeing the effects of the economy developing obtusely, where it's like, oh fuck, money went this way, work didn't.
Yeah.
And that's what we get for voting that way.
That's exactly it. Oh yeah, exactly.
And continuing to.
But no, people wonder.
A little bit more sad now after this.
Hey, look, people wonder why I'm in crypto, but this is exactly why. I don't believe in our system. Period. I'm down to go with a system where we're still working out the kinks and shit. And yes, there's tons of scams in the system, just like our system. But at least there's an end goal in mind, which is sovereignty, right? Actually having your money work for you. Hopefully, at some point, DeFi gets its shit worked out, right?
In our lifetime, please.
Yeah. Oh God, please. No, but then and real quick to just wrap up my story with the Lyft driver. So as she dropped me off, it was such a great conversation. She was really awesome. But then she's like, like it'd be awesome if you tipped me because all the tips just go directly towards me. And I was like, oh, I don't tip.